Another local issue, and this we'll begin with Ms. Palmer on this one. The Malloy administration's plans for Seaside. Wondering if you support the current concept, which is to try to find a private partner that the state would work with to try to save and rehabilitate the historic buildings there for use as park lodging, and to have beach access, and try to use that private funding to help pay for and maintain the park. If you're so, basically, are you supportive of the administration's current plans for the park or not?
Well, I think the jury is out on that. There was a public hearing recently in Waterford, and a variety of possibilities were put forth. Audience members got an opportunity to respond and give their opinions, but most of the folks said we need to see more. And I think they're right. We need to see how much all these options would cost. I think the decision has been made that it's going to be a park. So the question becomes, what kind of park are we going to have? And it ran the gamut of options as put forth. But the specifics are not there. So we have to put some meat on the bones, so to speak, so the public can weigh in a second time and have an opportunity to respond to those options that were put out in sort of a framework at this first hearing.
And just to follow, and something for the other candidates to consider, as a local representative, you have people that want to use the facility that don't necessarily live in your district. You serve them as well, the state does, but you may have maybe local neighbors that have a different view of it. So how do you weigh those competing interests between the general public and those who might be more directly impacted?
Well, ultimately, it would be a state park, as Governor Malloy has put forth, so that it would serve more than just the population of Waterford as it was presented. I think the interests of Waterford, however, and Montville as well, which is part of the district, should be taken into consideration very strongly, because on a day-to-day basis, it's the residents of the district who will be impacted the most by whatever is determined to be the outcome of the plan. But it's a balancing act. You have to balance the interests of the local people and balance the interests of the community surrounding the area, and balance with the interests of the state of Connecticut. So that's not an easy job, and we're just starting, I think. This is, the third try, I believe, to get to the point where we're going to have some solid options. So I'm looking forward to seeing what those specifics are and trying to talk with the residents of the district and figure out what we believe to be best for the region.
Thank you. Representative McCarty, if you could express your views on what do you think of the administration's vision for Seaside going forward.
Thank you. Well, first let me begin by saying I certainly did not appreciate the process of how we got to where we are, with the state coming in and declaring that it would become a state park. But we won't go into all of that. We are where we are, as Mrs. Palmer said earlier. So with that, I can say that Seaside is a treasure. It's a jewel. It's an extraordinary piece of land in the state of Connecticut with 32 acres of beautiful waterfront. I do believe that regardless of whichever plan goes forward, the beauty is that there will be public access down to Long Island Sound. I think that's important, that people can enjoy the beauty of the area and the region. So I'm pleased with that aspect of it. I've been engaged, very engaged from the very beginning about Seaside. I live right there, so I'm one of those residents in that region. I would like to just point out that the community in the area, they are open to a public-private partnership. I think the problem, even with the earlier proposal, was that the scope of the plan just kept growing and growing, and it made it very difficult for them at that point to accept. This plan, however, there are 3 plans, as was pointed out. We did have the public scoping hearing recently. There will be a public hearing going forward. There is no decision yet made on which one of the 3 plans would be the most optimal. I do question, however, how the feasibility, that where is the state going to find the funding, given that we just cut $1.8 million from the state parks, and we had to forego Family Day right over at Harkness this year because of the lack of funding. So the looming question is, where is the funding going to come? I actually happen to be a strong advocate for trying to preserve the Cass Gilbert, the main building. It's an historical building. We should be very proud to have such a renowned architect who built here in Waterford. But again, the problem is, where is the funding going to come for? A public-private partnership. The state still needs to put forward a sizable amount of money to have the buildings ready for a developer to come in. The unfortunate part about this piece is that now the town of Waterford will no longer be the beneficiary of the tax base. It would turn to the state, and given the record, I'm hoping that if there's any possibility of gaining any funding there, that it would stay within the state park fund and not go back into the general fund. But that's a long way off. I think right now the important part is that whatever plan goes forward, that it respects the town of Waterford's conservation plan, it respects the community, and that we find a way to make it possible.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Lauren Shaw?
Yes. I would say that when speaking about funding specifically, this public-private partnership is exactly what a public banking system would address. And as Ms. McCarty pointed out, I would also like to see some sort of partnership where the town of Waterford also benefits. However, I do believe that the way that the project has been handled so far, we are going to have difficulties finding developers. And in addition to Waterford's current struggle with another developer in another part of the town, I think it'll be very difficult to proceed in a way that benefits everybody, and that also, very importantly, preserves the ecological aspects of the Seaside Park. So in general, I've seen the 3 different proposals. I would like to see more done, more work, more development on those proposals so that we can have a better idea of how it will actually be developed and whether or not they are an acceptable choice for that piece of land.
All right. Thank you. Our next question is to Lauren Shaw.